All right, welcome everybody. This is a very brief session to review the new Green Schools Quest rubric. I wanted to start with a screen share here about basically just your resource folder to make sure you know where everything is as you're getting ready to submit your final projects. This resource folder has a ton of different folders in it, lots of logistics and lots of logistical information, but also a lot of resources if you're looking for maybe a couple of extra pieces of information, some ideas of how to shape your final project submission, etc. But I wanted to draw your attention first to the final submission requirements and rubric folder, which is the second folder here. In here, you'll see everything that you're going to need to submit your final project, including your baseline self-assessment, the final submission materials, your photo releases, and the scoring rubric, which is what we're going to review today. So I want to go over this in just a little bit of detail. This rubric is very different from last year's rubric and previous years. We have a Green Schools Committee who helps govern our programs, and we needed to update the rubric with some new standards and new point value systems. So it looks different and the points are different. And so I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of all those changes. So if we start from the beginning, you can see that there's categories of points. So our first category is simply, did you submit a final project, and some basic logistics. These points are kind of a yay or nay. Either you did it or you did not do it. Submitting the baseline self-assessment is very simple. You just download this form. This is a basic yes or no questionnaire about your school. Either you do these things or do you not do these things? And it doesn't matter so much what your actual point value is. It matters that, we want you to actually understand your building. So it's really about just completing this. And this is something that your students can complete with you. If you don't know the answer, you can just leave something blank. That is perfectly acceptable. Some of you might be wondering, did we already do that last year or have we done it in a previous year? We have kept track of your status, and if you have done a baseline self-assessment anytime since 2023, then you'll still get your points. So for example, if you look at Arcadia Valley High School, they submitted in 2023, 2024, and so they actually do not have to do one for this school year. So they're good to go. And if you want to check on your school status, you just scroll on down. If there is a school in here that you think you're missing your status, please let me know. I'm the person who takes care of all of that. So if it's missing, that's on me. So I need to fix that. Finally, then after you've done your baseline self-assessment, which is only worth 2 points because it's a pretty simple form, it should not take a ton of time. Then you're going to go to the final submission form, which is a JOT form. It's just a different form of like a Google form, etc. And it's going to ask you for all of your basic information, and then it's also going to ask you for who participated, how many people were directly involved. Those numbers are really important to us because A, we care about how many people are impacted, but also we care about how your school is impacted by this project and did it make a difference? And it's okay if it only impacted 5 students, but we also just want to know. We also, full disclosure, we use those numbers in our financial accounting. We want to make sure that we're telling our sponsors what impact they are having by donating to our program. This is a new question this year, estimating how much work was completed by the students throughout the planning and implementation phases of this project. This is a really helpful question for the judges. They want to know, how much did the students do versus how much did the teacher do? And the answer to this is not punitive, meaning if your students did 0 to 20%, that's okay, especially for our youngest students. The judges are just more interested and they want to make sure that they're judging projects fairly against one another. The same question here, estimating how much work was completed by the students, is specific for the final submission documents, meaning did the students write the written report? Did they create their digital presentation, etc.? And again, the answer is okay if the adult did most of the work. That's okay. We just want to make sure we know and the judges have a fair sense of who did what. And then there's a chance to explain both of those answers below. Then it asks you to kind of explain how did the rainbow of sustainability and the whole school sustainability framework play a role in your project. There's a link here to each of these concepts, and there's also a lot of information about the Rainbow of Sustainability in your resource folder. If you go on back into events and professional development, there's a presentation on both the Rainbow of Sustainability and on the whole school sustainability framework. So there's a lot of information there that will help you answer those questions. If you're unfamiliar with them, that's okay. We just want to make sure that we are working within the same systems that you guys are working within. After that section, they want to really dig into your project. So we want a title and we want a very brief description. The description is extremely helpful for us to make sure that we understand what type of project you took on. And so just make it short and sweet. Then they want to know about impact. How many people do you estimate were impacted? We know that this might be a future number also for those of you who are expecting a community project. That's okay if you are estimating, we think we're going to have 25 visitors to our school garden this year, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to understand how many people are impacted, and we're trying to understand the measure of impact. Think creatively here. Do you think that you saved your district money? Do you think that you diverted waste? Do you think that you planted a specific number of seeds or something to that effect? We love numbers and we love data, so the more the merrier here. Then there's an optional portion called the focus of the year, and this is just related to projects who took on a water project in 2025, 2026. And so if you did that, great. Explain how you related to water, and if not, that's okay. You do not get penalized for not focusing on water this year. Then there's a file upload portion where they are asking you to submit your written report. And the written report is simple, 1 to 2 pages max. Don't go crazy with it. You know, you're just looking for something to explain what did you do in your project and what did your students do. The digital presentation can take any format that you want. Past examples are PowerPoint, Google Slides, slideshows, videos. If you're going to submit a video, we ask that it is no more than 5 minutes because the files become much too cumbersome and difficult, and the judges really need to be able to read through your full submission without shortchanging anybody. So we want to make sure that your videos are capped at 5 minutes. Photo release forms are very important, and if you're unable to get your students' families to sign a photo release form, or if you're unable to get the full school photo release form signed, then just make sure that student faces do not appear in your photos. We rely heavily on our schools to police that, so that because you know your students, we do not know your students, and so we want to make sure that if there is a child who appears in a photo, that they have signed the photo release form. And if not, just go ahead and cover them up with an emoji or a blur or something to that effect. There's also a comment portion here that's available and optional. If you would like the judges to consider something specific for your school context this year, meaning something that really took over your project or took over your school year, might be snow days, it might be a schedule change, it might be administrative changes. Maybe you changed positions halfway through the school year. You never know. Schools do all kinds of fascinating things with staffing. So just give the judges kind of an idea of what went on this year and what maybe were some mitigating circumstances. And then a signature, and that's it for the final submission form. So this first portion, the final submission requirements, those are all the things that we just reviewed, and they're all worth varying points that the judges can award. The next sections are all about how well you explain your project and what you accomplished. So this yellow section, measured performance, this can be found either in your written report or your digital presentation. You can explain kind of where you started from and what you were trying to achieve, and then how did you achieve it, and what data was available to really measure your impact. So this it's going to look very different from school to school, project to project. Some projects lend themselves very obviously to data and some do not. So if you're doing maybe a school garden project, for example, you might not know the impact of, if you're doing a community garden, how many people come to visit your school garden over the next several years. But you can kind of give us an estimate and try and explain the impact in different ways. You might talk instead about how the garden shifted children's behavior or student understanding of STEM concepts in real world contexts. And so we're trying to make sure we understand, the judges understand where you started from, what you were shooting for, and where you ended up. Then the next portion, project demonstration, is really, really important. That's why it's worth 15 points. We want to make sure that we understand what actually occurred. It sounds crazy, but sometimes these forms don't really lend themselves to explaining what you did all that well. So we want to make sure that somewhere in your written report and your digital presentation, you explain what did you actually do, what did you accomplish, and about half of our schools will submit a plan for a project, meaning they have a project that requires spring or summer and they haven't started it yet. That is perfectly fine. You are absolutely allowed to do that. We just want to make sure we know, what did you do during the planning portion? What did you accomplish this year, and what are you hoping to accomplish in the coming months? So just make sure that you've explained very strongly what you actually accomplished, even if it is a planning project. Project perpetuation can also be in the written report or the digital presentation. And this is really a question about, how will this keep going? Meaning, was it a one and done project? Or is it really influencing your school culture in that long-term capacity? Have you made a significant change to how a school is run? Have you added a program? Have you added a club? Have you changed how you handle your waste or water or energy? We're really looking for an understanding of how impactful was this project and how will it continue after this school year. Creativity and innovation. This section is pretty new. This is an addition because most of our judges in previous years felt a little limited by their judging capacity to award points based on creativity and innovation. So they actually requested a creativity and innovation category, and they wanted to make sure that they're awarding projects that were also low or no cost. Or if you did have funding, they want to make sure the students were involved in securing funding. We want to make sure we have a very level playing field across our schools. So we know that some schools had a budget for their sustainability initiatives, and we don't want to punish that, but we also don't want to punish a school that did not have a budget for a sustainability project. So we want to make sure that schools are understanding that sustainability initiatives can be no cost, completely free, or they can be very, very low cost, or they can involve students engaging their funding. So we want to make sure we're awarding points on that, but we also want to award kids for being creative because, let's face it, kids are geniuses, and when we let them go, they have the best ideas. They're just inspiring, and we want to be inspired by them, and we want their ideas to shine. So we want to be able to give a lot of points based on how students were involved. I do want to point out, in several of these categories, there's this little caveat here in italics that this will look different by age group. And that is a theme throughout the entire rubric. And this is why we have judging categories based on age level. We know that preschoolers and high school students are very different creatures. They're very different in both their interests and abilities and their capacity. Also, the teachers are different. Preschool teachers have different demands than high school teachers' demands. So we want to make sure that we are judging lower elementary together, upper elementary together, middle school together, and high school together. And so the judges know that if they're judging a preschool class, or if they're judging a lower elementary age group, they know that student engagement will look very, very different. That's perfectly fine. We just want to make sure that students are involved in some capacity and really working to their fullest potential, and that they're given the opportunity to participate. The last category in the full rubric is communication and collaboration, and this can also be included in the written report or the digital presentation. And we want to encourage you to communicate your project outside of just the people who worked on it. So first, this line 17 is about communicating within your school and or your district. So we want to make sure that if you have a club or a class that took this project on, that it also gets proliferated throughout your school, and that the other students get to learn about this too, and the other teachers get to learn, and hopefully get to form a green team out of this. And we want to make sure that you are communicating this awesome project that your students did because it's great and the rest of your school needs to know. Then line 18, these 5 points are really about communicating outside of your school. This could be to literally anyone who is not on staff or attends school there. So this includes your Green Schools Quest mentor. It includes nonprofits, businesses, families, parents, community members, and literally anyone that you're communicating with. We wanted to point out, though, that the point difference is really quite large here between category 17 and category 18. So 10 points are awarded for communicating within your school because we know that you only have control over so much of the communications that go out from your school. So we wanted to heavily emphasize that which you have a little bit more control over, which is communicating within your school community. The extra 5 points here are for those of you who choose to find a way to communicate with outside entities. But we know that there are many restrictions here from many different schools, and every district is very different on how they allow communications outside of your school. So we didn't want to penalize anybody if they were not able to communicate outside of the school, but we also want to make sure you see that you are able to communicate with your Green Schools Quest mentor, which you absolutely, every teacher in this program has the ability to do that. So even if it is simply communicating your project and staying in touch with your mentor, you will receive points here from the judges. Finally, there is this lovely extra category at the bottom called extra credit. And this was also requested by the judges panel from previous years because they felt like the rubric was really excellent and exciting, and also restrictive. So in a good way, it provides a lot of structure to teachers and students to know what they're supposed to be turning in. But as teachers, we all know sometimes there's just that X factor in a project or a presentation or something that you really were inspired by and you felt really drawn to. So there's an opportunity for an extra 10 points for every single school to receive, based on a judge feeling particularly drawn to your project. And they do get to explain themselves in their comments, and you will receive all of the feedback from the judges. But I just want to point this out that there's no way that you can possibly prep yourself for extra credit. You really need to focus on prepping yourself for what is in the rubric, in the scoring rubric, and then let your project speak for itself. And that extra credit will come from a judge feeling inspired or drawn to your project for various reasons. And that might be because it fits with their background. It might be because they feel like your students did something extra special. There's not really any way to plan for the extra credit, which I know is frustrating from a participant standpoint. But from a judge's standpoint, they really felt very strongly about this, that they wanted to be able to have a little leeway in the rubric and in the point value system to award projects that they felt were extraordinary. So that's our rubric this year. There are most of the content points stayed very similar to last year, but there were several differences. So I wanted to just give you this brief overview, and also make sure that you understand that these hyperlinks actually do take you to different places. And then make sure you understand that your school folders, your resource folders are all available to you. There is so much information in here. It's kind of insane. So please, please take the time to make sure you're looking at all of the different resources available to you. And please email me with any questions at all. I will be sending you an email shortly with this recording and all of my contact information, of course, and a link to your folders. I'm going to stop sharing and just say thank you so much for participating in this year's quest. It has been such a joy to field questions from you and learn from you and come and visit some of your schools. It's just been ridiculously fun. I love this. I love this program so much, and I love that you have chosen to be a part of it. So I really thank you for your time and your effort and your ability to inspire students on a sustainability project. So please reach out with questions, and I wish each one of you such good luck in your final submissions. Thank you very much.